Welcome back to Double Fries, No Slaw, a special treat for you guys today. We'll talk a little bit about some of the true freshmen, some of the early impact guys that have made their way onto the field and into the stat sheet for Florida State. I've got Thomas Whitteman on with us. Thomas is in Dr. Pappas' sports management class, also works for the radio station V89, also part of the FSU, the Florida State newspaper, correct?
Yes.
Thomas went with me to ACC kickoff this year, and we had a good time up there hearing from Mike Norvell, and also covers the team. Have been at all the games, right? You're 3-0. We needed you. Were you there last year? Because
Yeah, man, there was a rumor that I was the press box curse last year with all the
yeah,
games I was covering. So
it was
really the only game I didn't cover last year was the Cal game, which we went out to win.
You really are. Yeah. It was the depressed box last year. So the dad jokes are free. So, all right. Well, cool. I appreciate you jumping on real quick. Let's talk about some of these freshmen. But I will say, like, I know we're all in a good mood. Everybody's pretty happy right now with everything that's going on. I mean, the narrative still is like, well, they put it together on the field at times, but the recruiting, this, that, and the other. It's been pretty cool to see some of the instant impact kind of true freshmen. And I understand the opponents that they played the last 2 weeks, but they had freshmen making impacts really even in that Bama game. I think about that drive where it felt like they were just going to Chroma over and over and over again, and he was just running Alabama defenders over. And I know the narrative now is, oh, Bama wasn't that good, or they just didn't play a good game. You caught him in a good you wouldn't want to play him now. It doesn't matter, man. And all that stuff aside, like Chroma is running guys over. And so it has been cool. Let's go through some of these guys. Maybe we can start with him. What has impressed you the most about him, and just kind of thoughts on his play so far?
Yeah, I think when we saw Roydell go down early, you were kind of looking at that running back room and thinking, how are we going to sort out this running back room? Who's going to kind of emerge as the second best pure runner? Now it seems like Gavin Sawchuk is kind of the early down guy, the guy that gets the first looks on offense. I think, like you said with Chroma, the contact balance is one thing. That's something you could see from a true freshman, athletic traits. But his vision has really stood out to me. Just looking at film, he's picking the right hole. Gus Malzahn's zone blocking schemes is very predicated on combo blocks and double teams at the line of scrimmage, which is going to create one-on-ones with second-level defenders. And Chroma just consistently makes the right decision on which hole to hit. He challenges pursuit angles. He's just done a really good job with that. That stood out to me in terms of just vision and making the right decisions in the run game. I think that we're going to see more of him, obviously, as the season goes on, as he gets his feet wet, so to speak. But like you said, the contact balance, forcing missed tackles on arm tackle attempts, but really that vision to me has stood out. It's not something that comes easily to running backs. It's usually something that second, third year you see them, making better decisions as a runner. But really from the first snap, from the Bama game, like you talked about, his first snaps, he's hitting the right hole at the right time.
Yeah, I've been impressed with two things, and one is the vision, but his physicality. Like, he runs so violently. Like, the way he like slams into guys and always falls forward. Isn't that something we think about with running backs is, man, when he falls forward, that's an extra 2.5 yards, that he's getting each time, because he just doesn't get driven backwards much. And I expected that. I don't know if I expected that as a true freshman in game one against Alabama. And maybe after seeing it there, I did expect it against East Texas A&M and Kent State, just because different level of athletes. But the way that he was able to run violently early is so impressive. But even more than that, because we knew he was a great athlete there. I mean, committed to Georgia up until signing day. Like, being a good athlete is not a shock. The way that he is able to consistently find the right lanes to run and find the right holes, like you were mentioning, that's something that takes time. It's not, freshmen aren't supposed to be able to do that. Freshmen aren't supposed to be able to do that against Alabama for sure. And so that has been insane to me. So really, yeah, the way he runs violently, the way he always seems to pick the right hole, not to jinx him, right? Like, because we got a game in 2 days, but it's really impressive. What about Javon Boggs? This is one, I'll tell you this. Before the season, he was getting so much hype and he was getting so much, this guy is like the truth for real. And I was just very hesitant to buy that. Maybe just being in a bad mood from last year. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a, negative Nancy at this point. But he was getting so much hype in the offseason. And my thought was, dude, he was committed to UCF. Like, I'm not trying to crap on them, but he was committed to UCF. He came over with a running style coach. And he I mean, it's just not a great wide receiver room. So yeah, he's just kind of like like the third best. Like we knew that Deuce and Squirrel would be 1 and 2. He's just kind of like the third best. He's not that good. He's been really impressive, and all of my doubt has been erased.
Yeah, I think, like you said, we were looking for that third receiver in the room coming into the season when you knew those two transfers were going to be the main guys. He has that familiarity being recruited by Gus at UCF. Really, I think one of the main skill sets we haven't really seen emerge from him yet is his after the catch ability. That's kind of what he was highly touted for as a prospect. Coming even into this Virginia game, I'm excited to see what he can do just because Virginia's defense, they seem to leave a lot open in the flats. I think we could see some screen work to him. I think that's something that really hasn't been tapped into yet. Against Alabama, he had that kind of seam go ball where a penalty was drawn by Deuce Robinson on the other side of the field, but it was a really well run route, just kind of an underthrown ball by Castellanos, one of the few throws I think he'd like back on the season. But Boggs' physicality after the catch, I think, is really his prime skill set. But his route running has been really a surprise to me. Just he has a lot more nuance to his route running than I expected. He's a guy that can move around a lot in formations as kind of a Z receiver. I just like to see that after the catch stuff, get some quick hitting stuff to him in the RPO game, things of that nature. I think that's kind of largely untapped from his skill set so far.
Yeah. In the offseason, I was told he catches absolutely everything. Like his hands are elite. And as a program that we've struggled with drops, especially last year, and we kind of remember that. Even Johnny, as good as he was a couple of years ago, like he would, kind of have that Mike Evans syndrome where he'd catch the most ridiculous ones, but then drop the easy ones across the middle or whatever. It's great to hear that his hands were there, but then seeing his kind of impact outside of just that has been pretty impressive. True freshmen don't often play much on the defensive line. And I think a lot of people just wondered, like, well, these this year twin, like, yeah, good take at the end. You got a couple of 3-star, like, whatever, like they have made an impact more than certainly more than I was expecting. And on a defensive line where one of my biggest questions with them was going to be depth, they've been a much needed addition.
Yeah, I mean, that's really been the biggest surprise to me. Well, honestly, I think it's the Sear twins amongst this group of true freshmen. Really, from the first day Tony White came in, the first kind of spring press conferences, scrimmages, those things, Tony White raved about how physically ahead the Sear twins were, which is one thing, but also their work ethic, their presence in the locker room, how big a part of what they're bringing to the table from that aspect. I still kind of was with you. I didn't really believe it. Are we really going to see these guys early, 3-star true freshmen amidst really what's a pretty deeply talented group for FSU on the defensive line? But in that week one Bama game, we probably saw 25 defenders play for Tony White, including both the Sear twins. I think Daryl's kind of emerging as a true edge, while Mantrell kind of plays on the inside as a 3 or 4 technique interior defensive lineman. But they looked physically dominant against one of the more physically, capable offensive lines in the country. I remember one rep where Daryl bull rushed Caden Proctor, who was a presumed kind of first round pick. He's kind of his stock is faltering a little bit, I think, but he bull rushed Caden Proctor into Ty Simpson's lap, which is just not something you see traditionally from a 3-star true freshman against someone that's considered a first round level talent. So just to be able to see Tony White has access to rotating so many different guys, and the way he's able to do stunts, bluff exotic blitzes where he's only really rushing 4 guys consistently, but you don't know which 4 guys are rushing and where they're coming from. That's really what's put the Desir twins in a position to make an impact early. Mantrell's been really stout against the run, and really just both of them being physically ahead helps them hold up in the run game.
I'll get right back to chatting about the true freshmen on FSU's team, but first, let me tell you about our friends over at Sleeper. Tonight, we are picking the more or less game. We're going to make you some money. Use our code DFNS for a 100% match up to $100. Make sure you check their terms of use because terms and conditions do apply. But we appreciate Sleeper for their support. I've already looked at the Tommy Castellanos passing touchdowns. I've already looked at the running backs more or less. I've got my picks ready. You got to tune in tonight to see it. So we'll be live at 7 p.m. Make sure that you don't miss that. Appreciate Sleeper for their support. I had some friends at the game on Saturday, and they walked out they had little kids there, and I took them. I said, hey, the players will sign autographs and stuff after the game. They walked out together, and I don't know if they just do everything together or not, but it kind of made sense being twins or whatever. And they're huge and pretty imposing, and to be true freshmen making an impact. On the defensive line, right? A wide receiver, a running back. Yeah, I mean, that we see that often in college football. To be doing it on the defensive line as maybe undervalued recruits is pretty impressive. I do like, and I know we're talking more on the freshmen. You mentioned White rotating. I mean, that was such a staple, of the 2023 team, and what made them so fresh. You think about like Jared and Braden and even Pat, and all these guys like taking over that Louisville game. That rotation early, and I understand that there's been pretty terrible opponents, and they've played a million guys the last 2 weeks, but that rotation even early in that Bama game just keeps guys fresher. And obviously that the defense looked like it got better as the game went along, and it's been pretty impressive to see. Let's go quarterback real quick. Sperry has come in first each week. Do you think we can talk about Kevin Sperry and just kind of your thoughts on him in general? But along with that, do you think he's your true backup, or do you think it's just kind of a Glenn has been kind of limited in fall, and so they're kind of working him back in? Sperry's had more reps, or like if something happened and Tommy couldn't go for a series or two against Virginia, like do you think Sperry would come in first?
It seems that way to me that Sperry is kind of your true backup at this point. I remember I attended the first summer scrimmage, and he was the first guy in after Castellanos in that scrimmage. Really, to me, his athleticism has stood out from day one. That's something they talked about. Both Gus and Mike Norvell talked about a lot during the offseason, was just how far ahead athletically he was compared to kind of what he seemed to be as a prospect. I've been surprised, honestly, to see him as the first guy out. I kind of thought with Brock Glenn's experience, even in a rough season with not much clicking, Brock Glenn, he went out there, he played his heart out, he played passionate, he executed to the best of his ability in a poor system. So I think the fact that Kevin Sperry has come out first in these games against lesser opponents, it really speaks to how far ahead they think he is, how comfortable he's in the offense. I think there is kind of an element of getting the true freshman, game experience where Glenn already has that. But to me, I think with what Gus Malzahn wants to do offensively, Kevin Sperry's athletic profile kind of projects better to doing the things that Gus Malzahn wants to do in the absence of Castellanos if something were to, go wrong there.
Thoughts on just him and his? I mean, you mentioned a little bit of that in this, but I didn't think he would come in, and I understand the level of competition, but still, as a true freshman, man, he's been pretty impressive. You're also playing with backups by the time he gets in, right? So, as a true freshman, I mean, he has impressed me more than he's certainly not been perfect. I'll tell you what stood out the most. He missed a guy down the right sideline, and I don't remember who, but he missed a guy down the right sideline against Kent State. And then they went back to that play either the next play or two plays later, and he hit it perfectly, like an out breaking route, maybe 15 yards downfield. Just his ability to adjust and say like, yeah, I just screwed that up and now I'm going to fix it. I think he's been pretty good. I understand the competition. I understand he's a backup. I understand the pressure is not really on when you're up 48 points or whatever we've been up when he's gone in. But I think the way he has played has been pretty good.
Yeah, I think you're right about just kind of the mental fortitude, which all the coaches and players around him have talked about in terms of just responding to the offensive system, his willingness to learn, but also just having that next play mentality as a true freshman. That's rare. A lot of times you'd see, a true freshman miss a throw or miss a read in that next drive, that next play, they're still thinking about it. And that's not really been him in any case. He's always been kind of moving forward with the drive, and just like I said, the comfortability in the offense has been apparent to me. Just knowing where to go with the football, that's something that kind of like I talked about with Chroma's vision. For a quarterback, that's something that usually comes with playing experience. It's not something you are ready to do from day one. And Sperry's been on time with a lot of things. Like I said, I think his athleticism just opens up a lot relative to Brock Glenn, who isn't a terrible athlete in his own right, but Kevin Sperry is just a plus athlete at the position. So just his ability to trust his playmakers, get the ball in their hands quickly, that's something you like to see from your true freshman. I think that's something you can be confident in a situation where he would have to step in.
16 true freshmen played on Saturday against Kent State. 8 recorded a stat, but it was one of the higher number of. I really don't remember. I don't have every FSU game log in front of me right now. I don't even really remember that many playing in a single game. Certainly this early in the year, and I know we play bad teams to start years most years, but 16 true for anybody we left off of that. I know Sandman Thompson's in there. I know that Shamar Arnaud is one that maybe people, but anybody else kind of stand out to you from that group this year?
Yeah, I think Shamar Arnaud is someone that I was really interested in the offseason. Being a late flip from Auburn, I really just liked his recruiting profile. Yeah, with Arnaud, I just liked his profile as a bigger physical corner, closer to 6'2", 200 plus. He has that kind of press man profile that Florida State traditionally looked for. But now moving over to Tony White, they play a lot more zone, a lot of mixing up concepts defensively. I think that's why we haven't seen as much of Arnaud early on, as he still kind of acclimates to all the different concepts that Tony White likes to play. But in terms of just the traits you look for in a corner, he has the size, he has the length, he has the man technique. I think it's just more so learning zone and learning zone instincts. But I mean, in the first scrimmage I attended, he was honestly the biggest standout player for the first summer scrimmage I attended. Made a lot of plays at that time. Jordan Scott was with the team as a bigger physical receiver. They were trying to dial up some goal line fades, some red zone fades to Jordan Scott. He made 2 or 3 PBUs in a row on Jordan Scott in a matchup with a 6'7" receiver. I really like Shamar Arnaud's physical traits. I think he could see more playing time as the season goes on. I just think right now there's a lot more trust in Tony White's starting corners in terms of playing different concepts, depending on what he wants to do.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk just really quickly on Virginia. I don't want to take up a ton of your time on this, but just overall thoughts. I know their defense has not graded out elite, but their offense has. And again, who they've played matters too. But just overall thoughts on the UVA game.
Yeah, I've been very surprised with UVA this season. I just think it's rare to see Tony Elliott's like offense dialed in this early in the season. They're clicking, they're blowing out teams. It's been FCS and G5. They lose that close game to NC State. But for me, I'm just not usually these William and Mary Coastal Carolina games for Virginia. Those are 1 or 2 possession wins, not winning by 21 plus in all of those. Des Kitchens, an offensive coordinator, alongside Tony White. They've had 500 yards of offense in every game this season. Tony Elliott did that twice in his first 3 seasons with Virginia. So
Yeah.
this offense is really, it's operating at a high level right now. They're building off the run a lot. They have 2 transfer running backs in Jamari Taylor and Harrison Whaley, both averaging over 6 yards per carry. Really, they're building off that a lot. I like FSU's, Jimmys and Joes to match up with UVA in the run game a lot. They should be without their graduate transfer center, which I think will play a big impact in terms of just FSU's ability to win on the between the tackles run game. But then they use that to set up Chandler Morris in the play action. They run a lot of mesh concepts in the pass game, the occasional 4 verts. Um, I think it's a good matchup defensively for FSU in terms of once UVA hasn't really had a team that can just match up with them in the run game physically wise, just on their schedule. I think that's going to make it more difficult for them in the passing game. Get Chandler Morris behind the sticks. His decisions will not be as easy. He's only been sacked once this season. I doubt that'll be the case come Friday night. Trell Harris, he's a former Kent State receiver, transfer that plays for UVA now. He's kind of their deep threat guy. He had 3 TDs in the first quarter against Stanford last week. So you kind of have to, make sure you're on top of him when it comes to go routes and things of that nature, which I think FSU did a really good job of when they matched up with Ryan Williams. Just make sure you take away that deep ball. Maybe you give up some intermediate stuff. That's where we saw, Jeremy Bernard kind of killed FSU on intermediate stuff. But you need to take away that go ball to Trell Harris, because that's what that's going to keep UVA in the game if you just give that up consistently.
Yeah, I wonder a little bit. Obviously, the team has looked so good, and they looked good in that week 1 game, and then level of competition is important to think about. It wouldn't surprise me at all if on a Friday night, and this has less to do, I think, with FSU and more to just do with the circumstances. It wouldn't surprise me at all if playing on a Friday night on the road for the first time, if the offense is a little bit sleepy to start this thing. I have nothing to base that on. They haven't shown me. I mean, they've started every game really well and scored on their first several possessions in each game, but that just wouldn't shock me playing on the road in conference because that's just how football typically works. And so I do think it's important for the defense to travel and the defense to, yeah, Virginia takes an early lead at 7-3 or something like that. Plenty of time to come back and not a lot of worry, but you just can't let that compound. You don't want to go down multiple scores and feel like you're reliant on getting away from your game plan. So I do like the matchup with our offense against their defense, but I do think it's important for the defense to really be there. And again, if Virginia is going to win this game, it's because it's going to be a shootout and it's going to be because their offense can continue to click. And so, I don't really know what's realistic, because our sample size is really so small against Power Four opponents. But man, if you hold Bama to 17, and I know they didn't play especially well in that game, some of that due to just newness of the team and some of that due to the way that FSU played on defense. If you hold Bama to 17, you really can't. To me, it would be disappointing for Virginia to score more than about 20, 21, and if you can hold them to 3 scores like that or, somewhere in there, it's hard for me to not see Florida State winning this thing. This game gets up in the 30s. I think it could go either way, but I really do expect the defense to play well and, limit them more than they have been so far this year. All that said, I'm not crapping on our offense or anything. I mean, NC State ran for like 220 yards. There really should be no excuse for Florida State's offense to not be able to move the ball fairly effectively in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're gonna see FSU come out, go to the zone read RPO stuff with Sawchuck early. Do they play? If they play the box, we can throw out the screen, or Tommy can pull it. UVA just doesn't really have the numbers to match up in the box. They don't have the guys. Then they're going to be forced to commit those safeties to the box. I think that's where you see the occasional shot to Deuce Robinson and Squirrel White, which they've been able to hit. Makai Danzy even caught a jump ball last week, which I didn't really think was part of his game. I think that was good to see. They're going to have trouble when they do go to man coverage, matching up with guys like Jalen Lucas and Makai Danzy out of the backfield. There's going to be an occasional shot to them. Castellanos really shouldn't have to attempt more than 20, 25 passes in this game. He ran the ball, I think, 16 times in his last matchup with UVA. So that's really what you want to see. Just build off this run, build off this RPO game, which is what obviously Gus Malzahn wants to do. I think it does help that UVA offensively likes to do a lot of similar things to Gus Malzahn. They do have kind of a jet motion and bluff jet motion aspect to their offense. They have kind of a split zone, outside zone aspect to their run game. So these should all be things that Tony White's defense is already accustomed to seeing in practice. I don't think they're really going to be catching you off guard with too much in terms of their offensive game plan.
Do you have a score in this one?
I would say probably 42-24, something like that. I think this one by about mid third quarter, FSU starts to pull away. I really just don't see how Virginia contains this FSU offense. They get Cam Robinson back at linebacker, who's really their star player at linebacker. He had 7 tackles against Stanford last week in his first game back this season. He's going to have to do a lot of sideline to sideline stuff. Their safeties are going to have to be extremely disciplined. And, I've already seen Alabama's second level defenders fail that eye discipline test against this FSU offense. So it's just hard for me to see Virginia, consistently making the right decisions, taking the right pursuit angles, and, not missing tackles in the open field when FSU has so many dynamic players with the ball in their hands.
I like it. 42-24. I might steal that score when we do ours tonight. So stay on the lookout. Thomas, where can people follow you, man? Where can they find all that you write and work and pods and all that stuff?
Yeah, thank you. Thomas_Winneman on X, just made a new X account. Same handle on Instagram. V89 Sports on X and on Instagram. You can find my articles, our podcast network on there. Also, just joined the FSView. Have my first story coming out hopefully in a couple weeks. So be on the lookout for that and follow me on all those networks. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you for hanging out, man. We'll see you around for sure and we'll have you back on, but I appreciate your time, bud.
Appreciate it.